everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me is Dr. Anahy Fonseca. Hi, Anahy. How are you doing today?
Hi, Marcia. I'm doing great. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here with you all.
Very good. Well, today we're going to talk about an interesting emotion. We're going to talk about anger. And Anaí, if I may just talk a little bit, this is maybe a little bit academic, but let's just give the foundation of what anger is about, right? It is an emotion, and that emotion can manifest itself in a variety of ways, physically and emotionally. So it's good for us to understand how complex it is and what are the impacts. For example, some of the common physical symptoms may be, yeah, your heart rate, right, increases. You may feel your heart pounding. I do that a lot. Your muscles can tense, right? They tighten. You can feel that in your jaw, in your neck, in your shoulders. You may start sweating, and your skin. I always see in cartoons where when you're angry, you get really flushed, right? Your skin becomes quite red. And in some cases, we may start shake or tremble. From a behavior perspective, that anger will trigger aggression. And that aggression can be seen from just outbursts, right, of voice or even physical actions. I've seen in movies, but also we see in novels where somebody's so angry that they just slam the door or they throw object. That irritability is a behavior change, a behavior expression of anger, right? And you just start to snap at people because you're no longer as patient as you were because of that anger. Or in some cases, I'm one of those, and they just withdraw. They withdraw. They don't. They're so angry that they cannot trust themselves that they're gonna be able to stay in that situation. So they just move away to avoid harsher realities. But beyond those physical behavior expressions of anger, we also can talk about emotional responses, right? So we may be frustrated, we may feel that we've been disrespected, blocked, we feel resentment, bitterness, hostility, right? We may be harboring feelings of animosity, and even from a cognitive perspective, racing thoughts, right? You're so angry that everything comes so fast at you, or we focus so much that we start to look at everything else. Or, of course, from a communication perspective, we may start to use our communication in a different manner. What I'm talking about is we're yelling, we're blaming, we can even use harsh, vulgar language, right? Or in some cases, sarcasm, right? So it's all of those are symptoms of anger. And I know this as we study, as we read about it. And I think the main message for us to think about is that when you recognize those symptoms, then you are able to perhaps manage your anger in a better way that doesn't hurt you. But before we dedicate this entire time together in this academic exercise, I want us to talk about free thinking, and let's digress, right? We already had two episodes when we referenced Inside Out, right? Because those who are in studying psychology interested, they see that very youthful movie, that they are good because they bring the idea of all of your emotional response inside one's brain. But good that it might be, the one scene that I thought, Anaí, was actually a completely different movie, which is really Star Wars, right? When there's a scene where Luke Skywalker, for those of you who know, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader are the two main um, characters, right, in that franchise. And Luke Skywalker is about to talk to the Emperor before the battle between Luke and Darth Vader. And he needs, it talks about anger, but he needs to confront some truths, big truths about himself and about what it is that he needs to do. Do you remember that scene? Can you talk
I
about it?
I love that. I love that, and I love Star Wars, and I think it's a much better scene, for instance, for us to use as an analogy of what happens to us, like in psychological and spiritual terms,
Yes,
because Inside Out is great, it's fantastic, but we can use, of course, an analogy of what happens to our inner child, for instance, and when we are adolescents. Of course, we're saying that, wow, our culture is very adolescent these days, right?
yes,
We
yes,
say
yeah,
that. But we want and we need to grow up. So I was thinking, Martha, that I was like, I think I love the original trilogy of
yeah.
Star Wars with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, I think it's the
Uh-huh.
name of the bad guy, and, and Princess Leia, and of course all the other characters. But that scene that you talked about, it's very, very useful for us to understand what happens to us in terms of what it's light within us, consciousness, higher consciousness, and what is still shadow aspects, as Jung says, like
Hmm.
anger and difficult emotions that are connected to inner conflicts, of course. And
Hmm.
Joanna, that our talks based on her books also. So Joanna says that anger can come from psychological aspects of this life, of this personality that we live, but also from spiritual, past experiences that are still with us, that we still have to work on them. So I think this scene that you talked about is great because we can see everything on it,
Yeah.
everything. I think it's
Can I
a
can
high.
I can I tell you some of the words that he uses?
Yes,
It's so
please
cool.
do it. Yes, go
So
ahead.
the scene is right. The emperor tells Luke, "Your friends will not survive." Right. So it's really the context. Choose, right? Your friends will not survive. There is no escape. The alliance, and to me, the alliance as a context is all of the environment that you inserted on, right? Will die, as will your friends. And then he says, I can feel your anger.
Yes,
And he goes, I'm defenseless. Take your weapon, strike me down with all of your hatred, and your journey toward the dark side will be completed. And it's very interesting because he keeps, egging him on. Come on, do this. You can do it. You can surface the dark side to kill me and protect the alliance, protect your friends, and win in so many words, right? But later in that discussion, he says, "You underestimate the power of the dark side. If you not fight, then you will meet your destiny. So it's just beautiful because it's, is it good and evil? Is it light and dark? Is it the truth about myself? What is it? Can you talk to us about it? And I think you have so many great perspective on Star Wars overall, but on this topic at hand.
Yeah, so I would love to start with because it's so wonderful how everything connects with a sentence by Joanna when she
Mhm.
says, like a fire that can begin with a spark and bring incalculable damages as it spreads. So anger can also be sparked with a small, simple insinuation becoming a volcano of destructive cholera that
Yeah.
takes over completely. So, in this scene that I strongly advise everyone to watch now, let's go back
Yes.
to the original series. That's wonderful. And the emperor actually is threatening look, right? Because he's remembering, he's saying that his friends will die, that there is no hope, the alliance, the good will not survive, right? And make this journey because the anger he is trying to spark this fire, as Joanna says in Luke, that of the anger. So if he feels the anger, then he will and gives in to the anger.
Yeah.
Then he will complete his journey to the dark side, as you said. But it's something really, if you can think of, he's trying to use the love that he feels for his friends, for everything that is good in the galaxy, because
Yeah.
the alliance was trying to, of course, bring light back to that galaxy far, far away, right?
Mhm.
So he's trying to use that to turn this love and this sacrifice that Luke is doing for his father, because we have to remember that this is the last movie from the trilogy, right? When
Yeah.
he faces Darth Vader in that's previously the battle between, or the fight between him, between Luke and his father. So Luke's trying to turn his father um, from the dark side to the light and bring him back to the light. And of course, he went, it's kind of naive. It looks like very naive because he surrenders to the emperor, right?
Yeah.
So that he can face his father and asks and he says, I'm not going to fight you, father. Okay, because his father, of course, we all know, has given to the Emperor Palpatine and gone to, he was a Jedi, right? Luke's father, but then he turns to the dark side because of hatred and all this stuff. So Luke is like trying to transform all of this to bring his father, and to, it's like a hero journey, right, that we
Yeah.
all have to do to really strive, persist in bringing the light that is within all of us in action in this world, right? And this is everything like evolving consciousness, working with our shadows from the psychological point of view. So what Joanna is saying with this beautiful image, that
Mhm.
it's like a fire, and it begins with a spark that can bring incalculable damage as it spreads, right? And anger can do that.
Yes.
So I was thinking, uh, what, which or who is Emperor Palpatine in our days, Marcia and everyone? And automatically I thought, look of all the images that we have through, different kind of medias and the social medias also and all this stuff, small, sometimes are small words, small images that come and try to make us feel anger, right?
Yes.
Even if it sounds like a justified for us to, oh, I'm anger, I feel anger because, and sometimes, Marcia, when I was listening to you describing the physical effects of anger,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
the image of the volcano comes to my mind again, that Joanna brings, because it's like
Yes.
passion,
Yes. Yeah.
you, if you surrender to this kind of passion, then Joanna also says that it's like a vicious cycle, circle. Sorry, it's like a vicious thing,
Yeah.
because then you get stuck in that, and it's really a passion.
Hmm.
And don't we? Well, I'm not in social medias, but I listen to that from my patients and family and friends all the time. So what's going on these days is, of course, there are people exchanging good things and right and emotions and bringing some reflections, of course, but the part of it in our days that is like Emperor Palpatine
Yes.
trying to, to make us fight
So
each other.
it's seducing, right? It's a very seductive
Yes.
in a negative manner, but seductive way to bring to what is manipulative, right? But it's
Yes.
playing with the emotional response to a threat. And I think that's what anger is a mechanism to respond to threat. Your friends, your life, everyone will die. It's a direct threat. Come on, get angry, right? But I love what you said. Who is that in our lives today? Who
Yeah.
is playing that seductive, manipulative um, way of pulling us into an out of control type of emotional response?
Yes. And look what Jonah says, Marcia, and
Mm.
everyone. Anger is an emotion activated whenever the ego feels wounded,
Yes.
liberating that abominable opponent that destroys peace in an individual.
Hmm.
So, if we, I think we have to really pay attention to ourselves, because if we feel wounded, of
Yeah.
course, we keep saying this here in our talks, right? I shouldn't look outside of myself. And people are asking to look outside all the time, all the time. Lots of images and news and
It's so much easier
discussion.
though, Anayi. It's so much
Yes.
easier to look outside instead of inside. And
Yeah.
if I go back to the dialogue, what I see is without words, Luke is having the dialogue within himself to really go deep, deep within to understand how do I react to this external impulse for me to be angry, right?
Oh, yes, that's a point, because, of course, in the moment that the emperor is seducing him, in a
Yeah,
sense, making threats,
yeah,
making him, we can see in Luke's face that in the beginning he's feeling hatred.
yeah,
And the emperor feels that, okay,
hmm,
because it was like a telepathic or
yeah,
whatever, right?
uh-huh,
Action. So the dark side can be, we cannot be naive, can be really seductive and strong,
yeah,
because in our days, in kind of, if we think of our consciousness, we still have shadow work to do. Of course, we are not light yet, totally
yeah,
light. We
yeah,
have a lot of light within us, but it's still, we are still working on it so it can shine brightly in a very near future, right? Because we
Mhm.
know we are all evolving, and this is like, the world works in this way, and consciousness works in this way. It's all always evolving. Okay, so we know that. But the thing is that, the shadow is still there. There is still some shadow within all of us. And
Yeah.
of course, as we have said before, our personal shadow connects to the collective shadow, right? So as much light as we can turn on within ourselves and manifest in the world, then we're manifesting as a collectiveness also. But what I think it's very important for us to think about is that, when the ego, as Joanna is asking us to think, feels wounded,
Mhm.
okay, then, probably we are going to liberate that abominable, as she says, opponent that destroys peace within ourselves. But, of course, we have a hard time understanding that all of this happens inside of us. As you
Yes.
say, Marcia, it's easier to think that everything is happening outside of us, because actually is happening because the collective, collectively, we are, of course, working in these days, with our collective shadow. But we cannot help others if we don't do the homework, right, of doing this work inside of us, right?
Very
As you,
important.
as
Very interesting what you said. We cannot help, let's say, the world if we don't help ourselves. And this is very beautifully said, but it's an alert to all of us. Let's listen. Let's be prepared. We're not even prepared to listen because we're so distracted nowadays, right? Let's be very intentional and let's filter all those inputs and control, if you will, manage how those inputs touch us. How do we react to those inputs so that we can then feed the external with a positive light versus bringing even more pollution, more darkness, if you will.
yes, yes, that's greatly said. Because
Hmm.
if I feel wounded, and the
Hmm.
ego is consciousness, right? So if I'm conscious that I'm feeling wounded, right?
Hmm.
uh, if I have this insight, for instance, if I turn to myself to discern what's going on within me, myself, so of course, then I can recognize, is it the inner child, the wounded child within myself? Do
Hmm.
I have feelings of inadequacy, of
Hmm.
low self-esteem,
Hmm.
or what's going on inside myself? Then, of course, then I can better understand. When I understand myself, I can better understand others, because we all have kind of similar mechanisms, and psychically speaking. But if I don't do that, if I don't understand myself, then that's the vicious cycle that Joanna is talking about. Then, of course, I'm going to be the victim,
Yeah.
and everybody outside of me, or the world, or whatever, is hurting me. So I'm allowed to feel anger. That's what the emperor wanted you, look, to feel, allowed to feel and be taken by the hatred, the anger.
Yeah.
Of course, and when you do that, of course, when you really are filled with that, then automatically you are the victim and the other, and you're justified in your darkness.
Yeah.
That's what
I
happened to his father. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I just the as you're speaking here, there are two images and two great people that come to my mind. But it's that anger, if it's fed, that the fire, that spark that then catches fire, is this very antagonistic, right? And I'm putting one hand, one fist against the other, as in the symbolism of a fight, a physical fight, right? But those two individuals that come to my mind, Anai, are number one, the Dalai Lama. This is about, oh, 25 years ago, the beginning of the millennium. He wrote in one of his books that he visited, and I may have told you this story before because it really touched me. But he visited his, you know, friend, childhood friend, who was a monk that stayed behind, and he, the Dalai Lama, was able to go in exile. And so 20 years later, he visits now, and they're both in their 40s. One stayed behind, and one was tortured every day. The Dalai Lama was not. So he confronts his former friend, and he says, "How are you? Despite the fact that we both grew older, you look so well." And I love the passage because it's very almost a vain type of remark. You look so good. You don't look like the ravages of a tortured life would seem to do to your body. And of course, from their philosophical religious perspective, it's all about loving compassion, right? So the monk says, I couldn't, right? When the person that imprisoned me would come to torture me, I had to look at him with love and compassion, because if I didn't, I would be just like him. And the difference here is that he was giving orders to do this, but I know better. I have peace in my heart. I have love and compassion. And I thought, my goodness, what an amazing story to tell all of us, because at the moment of any type of attack, of hurt, or where we're victims of whatever situation, we should be able to look at ourselves and say, what do I want to be? What is the best that I can be in this situation? And the other one, the other story, of course, is Nelson Mandela, as he leaves the prison after 27 years of torture, terrible life. And as he becomes a president, he goes to lunch, and there's all those people, and he saw somebody in the same restaurant in another table eating by himself. And I don't know if you heard this story, Anaí, but he invites the man in, and the man sits and he shakes the whole time, and he's very quiet, right? And they have lunch together. They leave, and somebody asks him, "Who was that man?" And he said, "Oh, he was the guard that tortured
Yeah.
me, right? He tortured me every day." And everybody's like, "Why didn't you imprison him?" I can't, right? If I do, I'll be just like him. So let's practice again. He didn't say this, but it's all about forgiveness, it's about love, and it's about compassion, extrapolating the situation of conflict, right?
Yes,
But
exactly.
yeah.
But it's not easy, Marta, because for many people, and
Mm,
these examples, of course, the Dalai Lama is a spiritual leader
yeah.
with all the Buddhist millennia tradition
Hmm.
and practice, right?
Yeah.
Meditation and a
Yeah.
lot of reading and studying. And I've been to and Nelson Mandela. I've been to Cape Town, and I've seen the island. I couldn't go there because I can remember I was in a congress, a
Yeah.
psychiatric congress, and there was no time. But I've seen it, and it's kind of looking from Cape Town, from the city. It's kind of desolate place, but he had a Bible to
Mm,
read, from what we know, and the only book that he had. and he and Nelson Mandela, and his so decades in the prison, and the
Yeah.
guard became his friend actually. So, of course, this doesn't help happen in the trilogy. It was not that spiritual of Star Wars because they end up killing Darth Vader. Oh, spoiler alert! Uh,
Oh.
ends up killing the emperor, but of course, it's very symbolic. They could have tried Luke and his father
Yeah.
to turn the emperor to the light. But of course, we are talking about forces that we're joking, but it's kind of cool because it's we can think both ways, psychologically and spiritually speaking. So, forces within us
Mm-hmm.
that create, that are love and light as
Yeah.
the creator, right? But are still at this point of our evolution, let's say, growing and making themselves more apparent for ourselves and for others, are evolving in a sense. But we still have opposite, like Joanna says, opponents within ourselves. So forces that kind of come against our evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could say the darkness, as you said, is still within us, ignorance and all of stuff that makes us kind of and seduces us
Yeah.
because we have all these shadows like the low vibration emotions like
Yeah.
envy, competition, and things that dissociate us. This is very important because when we are dissociated from the light, let's say,
Mm.
metaphorically speaking and also literally speaking,
Yeah.
when we we are seduced by the dark, by the shadow aspects, so of course we get resentful, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to justify that our position is the correct one, right? So it's kind of easy in a sense to seduce somebody that it's stuck in a childish understanding of the psyche, and
Yeah.
also of the spiritual, the spiritual dimensions.
Yeah.
So, what I think it's very important in all of this, that for instance, we could think that Nelson Mandela in the beginning, let's say,
Mm.
his ego was wounded because he was in prison, because of course he was feeling really mad for all the apartheid stuff that was
Yeah.
going on in his country and all this stuff. But all of this, from the psychological point and spiritual point of view, is and all of this kind of energies and understanding of the world and our purpose being here in this dimension that it's very dual, okay,
Yeah.
uh, are forces that are not for our evolution. They are trying to dissociate us.
It's very
And
interesting. Yeah.
every
Yeah.
sacred text, if it is
Mm-hmm.
sacred, if there is in the text a knowledge, mythological, sacred stories of our evolution, philosophical, even scientific thoughts that help us to better understand ourselves, nature, and our
Mm-hmm.
interconnectedness.
Yeah.
So all, but especially the what we call the sacred texts, if you reflect upon them, you are going eventually to connect with your inner light. And I think that that's what happened to Nelson Mandela uh,
Mm-hmm.
through the years, because it's not chronological time. It took him like 2 decades, probably, or more.
Yeah.
But what happened eventually is that he connected, he reconnected, really, Jerry, reconnected with his higher self, capital Jung's capital S
Mm-hmm.
self,
Hmm.
So what happens is that, of course, at this point, there are no enemies because we are all one. Even if you don't say exactly these words, but if you feel that, and I strongly think he felt that, as your example, the Dalai Lama friends, the monk, he
Yeah,
felt, when he felt compassion for the torturer, that
yeah,
it's so difficult, right, Marcia?
yeah,
But when he
yeah.
felt compassion, then he was in a non-dual position from the depth psychology perspective. And then he and the guard and the torturer were one. So if I love myself in a sense, right? If I have this inner strength, of course I will love my enemy. Who said
Hmm.
that? That we should love our enemies,
Yeah,
right? It has
yeah.
been said to us.
The most revolutionary human in on earth, right?
Yes,
Which is amazing that of everything that we heard from Jesus, but this invitation to love our enemy had never been said before,
yeah.
right? So it is a truth of such magnitude for all of us to understand.
That's totally, yes, so intense,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's so beautiful because from the depth psychology point of
Mm,
view, when you understand not only with your mind but with your heart what he wanted to tell us when he said
mhm.
love thy enemy, right?
Yeah.
And love is understand, deeply understand, and Joanna talks about self-enlightenment,
Yes.
self-enlightenment. So we need to deeply understand ourselves in order to deeply understand others, right?
And when we
Because
do
if we
that,
don't
it
do
becomes easier, right? It becomes
much,
possible. Yeah.
yes, much easier. So from this point of view, anger that we are talking about, just there's no point in anger anymore
Yeah.
because we are not going to feel threatened.
Yeah.
Go
Let me
ahead.
let me let me let me just flip a little bit because I read about some benefits of anger. And this is a double-edged sword, right? They can be there's a positive aspect of anger that may make us really invite and stay, hold on to the anger because of those benefits, if you will. So that energy, that anger energy, it can be a powerful motivator for addressing things that are, I don't know, injustices or activism that you need, or opportunity for you to advocate for yourself, for your peers, for the underdogs, right? So anger can be the spark that push you to lead to changes that maybe have not been able to happen for a long time. And the other thing that anger does that I read is that it leads to enhanced resilience. And with that resilience, it can actually build emotional intelligence on handling difficult situations, or even a sense of empowerment. Because as you know, if I am angry and I'm just and I'm very forceful, people start listening to me, right? And with that, I may all of a sudden go like, oh, and I'm just joking here, I think I'm going to be angry, allow myself to be angry more often, because when I'm angry, I command respect, I command the silence of others, I command their obedience. And I just thought it was funny that, yes, anger we can look at all the negative sides of anger. There is some positive sides of anger, but anger at its birth, right? It's the beginning of, if you think in terms of its origin, it's all about giving us that hot, red energy type that pushes to deal with a situation that is not comfortable. Am I correct in saying that? Am I
Um, let's agree to disagree.
okay? All right, very good.
Because you are correct. Let's say, let's think from a Freudian point of view. Let's
Sure.
say, if we are talking about the ego and the adaptation to this world.
In
But
materialistic view of our lives,
yes,
right? Yeah.
yes, that's correct. But we don't want to adapt to this world. That's where Jung and Freud disagreed in a sense, because
Mm,
um, and look, it was like I think almost 100 years ago, all the
yeah.
disagreement between
Yeah.
Jung and Freud in the beginning, right?
Uh-huh.
I think they broke up like 1912, 1913, more or less, when Jung writes symbols of transformation. Okay, because he was said no, there is a deeper side of the psyche, and I have to investigate it basically. And Freud
Mm.
would say, "Oh, this is the occult. This is blah blah blah,"
Yeah.
and this is a childish thought and wishful thinking and all of this. But Marcia, see, we are like more than 100 years from that
Yeah.
moment when they weren't able to go on working together. We have to evolve.
That's
These
right.
are low vibration emotions. Of course, it's like, as Joanna says, it's like kind of natural. It's
Yeah.
still natural to
Mm-hmm.
our psyche, our ego,
Mm-hmm.
but we are very these days we are very egocentric, we could
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
right? And we have to go further than that. We have to go further because the ego thinks itself as the center of its reality. So it's like you are in a prison. You are stuck in the perception of yourself as the empowerment. It's all about that in this sense. Oh, I have to be empowered because I have to fight injustice and this and that. It's not that you don't have to talk about that and to think together different ways of understanding ourselves, of tolerating, if you say, if we wish, our differences, because everybody, we are not, we are waves in the same oceans, but in the
Yeah.
same ocean, but different waves, right? We
Yeah.
have different experiences, different ways of expressing this experience, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. But that's the richness of this ocean. So all of us with different experiences and manifestations of these experiences make this beautiful ocean of life,
Yeah.
physical and spiritual life in the planet. But we have to understand ourselves as a whole. And if we don't do that, if we dissociate, if I'm always fighting, it's not that I don't have to deal with difficult issues and shadow issues that we are talking about, okay? But the empowerment, I think, doesn't come. And if we still think it's going to come from fight, from anger,
Mm-hmm.
we are kind of giving this energy life in the planet again and again. And I agree with Joanna.
And quite childish, right? Very immature, psychologically speaking, to
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, because there are researches in psychiatry and psychology. We
Uh,
were talking about that the other day. That what you feel, what we feel inside when we look at when we talk about fear, and I strongly think people could go look at our talks about fear here.
Mm.
About the amygdala and about other structures in the brain, when we see a face of someone showing emotions of anger,
Mm.
that we the fear reaction starts in within our physical body, in our brain, and we react, and usually we are going to react in aggressive form. So we get stuck in this vicious circle of
Yeah.
anger,
Yeah.
okay? And then Joanna says that we can adapt to these situations
Yeah.
and start developing aggressive behaviors. So we never get rid of some kind of war, for instance, in the world, because we are always saying, oh, I have to go there, I have to do this and that, and I have to face the situation. We have to do that. But like in United Nations, the thought when they built it was after the Second World War, and
Yeah.
it was all based in higher standards and the spiritual, and we could say, and high moral values of we need to talk to each other in a more respectful way. We need to understand that we share this planet and all of that. And just we know, I know that we are getting to the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to remind what Joanna says about therapy of anger, right?
Yeah.
That she talks about self enlightenment, that we said, courage to postpone decisions, discussions, and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, because
Mm.
the wounded ego leads the person into inappropriate actions. So if we just react and think I'm empowering myself because I have to, use my anger to go there and face. Look what the examples that we talk here, the Dalai Lama, his friend, Nelson Mandela, they were all saying, wow, it's not this path. Joanna talks about silence, and
Yes.
we are screaming in the streets.
Yes.
Let's get everybody, if we disagree with them, just sit, everybody sit, and let's meditate
Yeah.
for
Love it.
this and silence. And Jonah talks about patience. As Luke in that scene, just coming back quickly, he's feeling hatred, but when Palpatine tells him, yes, feel the anger and get your sword and strike me. What does he do? He he turns, and we see in his face that he gets courage in the silence,
Yes.
and he turns to this patience that Joanna is asking us, and self-control. She also tells us to have this self-control. So I just wanted to finish with this. We were talking about this guy 2000 years ago, right? Wonderful, wonderful master that synthesized everything that was said previously from other light teachers. But he gave such beautiful examples of pacification that we seem to have forgotten, and that we are allowing ourselves to be seduced by palpitines of our days, and forget that we must pacify ourselves to
Mhm.
find what? To find the light, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to tell everyone that when Jesus on the cross,
Yeah.
and we can't even imagine what have must have been to be on the cross, not only the physical pain, but the emotional and the emotional pain, of course, the conflict. If we could imagine not him that was so evolved spiritually, but us in that position, right? And we say that he was connected to the Christic consciousness in that the depth psychology context, that is universal love, right? And in this universal love is, we know that it's deep within our psyche, in our higher self. Okay, and it must be activated. We need to activate this strong love that we have within ourselves, and that this love represents the most effective factor of sublimation, healing, and transcendence of low energies such as anger, emotions of anger, as we are talking. And I just wanted to remind what he did for us in psychological and spiritual terms during
Mhm.
the crucifixion, sorry. He generated a powerful example of healing from anger when he says, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they do. So
Yes.
at this moment, he manifests to the cosmos that he was without anger. And from this moment on, in psychological, deep, that deep psychological terms, and spiritual, we can say that he has opened a door in our collective unconscious for all
Beautiful.
of us to
Yeah.
work on our human anger and aggression.
I
I
love
just
it.
want to leave this.
No, this is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I know we're at time, and I wanted to just um, reconfirm or leave with the notion that beautiful words, by the way, Anaí, but Joanna de Angelis really encourages us to seek that inner silence, inner peace, right? And to view, just like what that really extremely symbolic scene at the crucifixion, that for all of us to view challenges, whatever they are in our lives, as opportunities for our own personal growth, for our own spiritual development. So I recommend all of you, if you are interested in know more about Joanna de Angelis and what she does, how she explores this subject, I'd say the book Existential Conflicts is amazing. But maybe this was the first time you watched this podcast. And please note, our program, Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks, are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis. And we're here to talk, to bring those themes to light, but also to offer safe space for us to confront, compare, correlate, and expand our concepts from a psychological perspective. And before we say goodbye, I want to say thank you for the important organizations that are sponsoring this program. Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritus Federation, the International Spiritus Council, and AMI Brazil. And leave us your thoughts, your feedback, your questions. Maybe we'll be able to answer them, address them in our next episode. But with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Anaí. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see you next time.
Bye bye. See you next time.